could start, huh? I think
Sure.
you have to
I
unmute
had muted
yourself.
myself.
All right, okay. I'll start then.
So welcome everyone to the Sifter of Dust Tea House discussion that we host on Thursday evenings. This is an open discussion that we have with a short presentation. It's really intended to help people dig into the truths and beauty that is in the Baha'i religion, the Baha'i Faith. As most of you know, the Baha'i Faith is one of the most diverse religions of the world. It's a major religion. Baha'is are followers of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith, just as Christians are followers of Christ and Muslims are followers of Muhammad. What Baha'u'llah taught, however, is that all of these great religions are from the same God, from the same source. And they've really been progressively revealed to humanity to illuminate our consciousness, build unity, and give us really spiritual insights into the nature of life. And so the Baha'i Faith really has this universal view of the religions that have come before it, and seeing them all as a part of one spiritual path, if you will. Now, what we all experience together as we go through life is a spiritual path. And what we're told in all of these great religions is that our purpose is a spiritual one, to grow and develop spiritually, grow our insides, to be better people, but also to appreciate the beautiful virtues and to express those in our lives. So we sponsor these gatherings to have discussions about these topics. So I'm really pleased today we were able to welcome into the tea house Peter Guylay from Australia. We're here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Peter is in Sydney, Australia. Peter, I had come upon his writings through BahaiTeachings.org and then his own website, and I was very impressed with him. And he's recently written a book called Walking the Mystical Path with Practical Feet, which really, I think, fit a lot of the ideas that we wanted to talk about in terms of what is a spiritual path and how do we achieve it. So Peter has a degree in philosophy. He's an author, he's a novelist, he's a teacher. And I'm so glad that Peter was able to join us all the way from different time zones. We joked earlier that he could probably tell us what's happening in the stock market tomorrow for those of us living in Philadelphia, but you can't ask him any questions about the future, even though he's living in tomorrow morning. So Peter, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Peter, can I just ask a few questions to kind of give people a little bit so they know who our speaker is and so forth? You're obviously Australian, right? And were you born and raised there?
Yeah, that's right. In a city called Newcastle, which is about 2 hours drive north of Sydney.
Yeah. And you studied philosophy in school and got interested in religion a little later. I'm curious because you have a tremendous amount of insight into the Baha'i writings, and I was curious how you came to that. You know, what gave you that thirst to understand them, and what brought you to study them more deeply?
Well, I guess, you know, in my early 20s, I came to see the need to find a spiritual path. You know, before that, I was raised with a religion, but not very, didn't follow it very deeply, and then became an atheist as a teenager. And then around my early 20s, started sensing that there was some kind of higher power that controls our lives. And I felt like I needed to find a path to lead me closer to higher power. Did look and practice different religions, and there's still many aspects of them that resonate me, and I still pick up and read the holy books from different religions. But what I liked about the Baha'i Faith was its emphasis on spirituality, but expressed in a practical form and concrete actions in the world. So that's really what motivated me to find out more about the Baha'i Faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Had you gone through a stage where sort of that inner, whether it be sort of framed as a Buddhist approach or where that inner spiritual journey was a major part of your thinking? It's reflected a little bit in your writings in terms of you have, knowledge of that mystical aspect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was probably the first thing that got me interested in religion, was the mystical aspect.
Yeah.
That really deep yearning that we have to connect to something higher.
Yeah.
And I also found that in the Baha'i Faith.
Yeah.
And, but again, it's that mystical connection that we also attain through action, and our actions are also heightened by our mystical or spiritual connection to God. There's that interconnection between the two, I think.
So that's why your book is called Walking the Spiritual Path with Practical Feet. It's really the mysticism is expressed in practical life, right?
Yeah, and that title comes from something that was said about Abdul Baha, who was the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith, that he treads the mystical path with practical feet. So he was the perfect example of that.
So thank you so much again for joining us. I'm going to turn now over to you formally. You've prepared some slides so that we can go through, and I'm really looking forward to a further discussion.
Okay, so today we're talking about the spiritual path, which might mean different things to different people. There are different ways to follow a spiritual path. Each of the world's religions and spiritualities offers a way to reach something higher or something deeper. And I think that every human being, whether they are conscious of it or not, is searching for something deeper in their lives. They may not call it God, they may not call it spirituality, but there is that drive that is there in all of us. So one way to think about the spiritual path is a relationship. From a Baha'i perspective, it's a relationship between God, manifestation, and the individual. And I'll just go through in the next slides to talk about those three aspects. So like most religions, or if not all religions, in the Baha'i Faith, God is seen to be the all-loving creator who created everything and everyone out of love, who continues to love us and continues to guide us, and is the underlying power behind all creation, and who is also ever present in our lives. And in the Baha'i writings, we do refer to God as He, but God does not, in fact, have a gender. God is not male or female. The way I understand it, perhaps, is that, part of it is we're dealing with English translations. The other thing is that it perhaps wouldn't be fitting to call God it, because if we call God it does strip God of male and female attributes, but it also strips God of that personal dimension. And in the Baha'i Faith, God is connected to all of us in a personal way. Now, that said, although God connects to all of us personally, God's essence is unknowable. So to illustrate this, we'll look at I'll just read the quotation on the screen. Immeasurably exalted is He above the strivings of human mind to grasp His essence, or of human tongue to describe His mystery. No tie of direct intercourse can ever bind Him to the things He hath created, nor can the most abstruse and most remote illusions of his creatures do justice to his being. Through his world-pervading will, he hath brought into being all created things. He is and hath ever been veiled in the ancient eternity of his own exalted and indivisible essence, and will everlastingly continue to remain concealed in his inaccessible majesty and glory. So this is really explaining that God is, far transcendent from what we can imagine, and the picture of God that people might have in their head is not what God is. Sometimes I've found myself, in prayer or meditation, trying to strip my imagination of God, and in the vain hope that, okay, now that I've got this blankness in my head, then I'm connecting to God, but that blankness is not God either. Whatever we think in our head is God, that's not God. Now, to some, that might feel sad or unfortunate that we can't know God's essence. But the thing is that God's bounties are so plenteous in his creation that he all of his attributes, everything that exists, mirrors at least one of his attributes. And so in the world we witness the splendors and bounties of God everywhere. So we're not deprived of anything. However, if we do want to approach God, from a Baha'i perspective, we see that there is the need for a channel or a mediator between individual and God. So we call these people the manifestations of God, and these are called messengers of God or prophets of God, who have come to us throughout history. Figures like Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and more recently, Baha'u'llah. And what's amazing and mysterious is that these beings are blessed to have that direct connection to God, and that they can receive his will and his teachings and pass them on to us. So that means that humanity is not forever lost and alone. We are always connected to God through these manifestations. So I'll just read a quote about them. These prophets and chosen ones of God are the recipients and revealers of all the unchangeable attributes and names of God. They are the mirrors that truly and faithfully reflect the light of God. Whatsoever is applicable to them is in reality applicable to God himself, who is both the visible and the invisible. The knowledge of him, who is the origin of all things, and attainment unto him are impossible, save through knowledge of and attainment unto these luminous beings who proceed from the Sun of Truth. By attaining, therefore, to the presence of these holy luminaries, the presence of God himself is attained. So this just shows how the manifestations of God are able to mirror forth all of God's perfections. So they are the perfect human being who we can follow and attain God's presence, which is a true bounty. So now let's look at the individual. Not only has God created us out of love, God has also created us in his image. As the first quotation says, "O Son of Man, veiled in my immemorial being and in the ancient eternity of my essence, I knew my love for thee. Therefore I created thee, have engraved on thee mine image, and revealed to thee my beauty." So, although we are not God, we are like God. He's created us in his image. We unlike anything in creation, we have all of God's attributes. And the second quote says, "How resplendent the luminaries of knowledge that shine in an atom, and how vast the oceans of wisdom that surge within a drop. To a supreme degree, this is true of man, who among all created things hath been invested with the robe of such gifts, and hath been singled out for the glory of such distinction. For in him are potentially revealed all the attributes and names of God, to a degree that no other created being hath excelled or surpassed. All these names and attributes are applicable to him." So we are, not really aware of that we have these attributes. They're inside of us, latent and waiting for us to activate them. In the history of philosophy, East and West, there's this question of, are people born evil or do they become evil? And people stand on different sides of that argument. But the Baha'i view is that we're born with the potential. We're born with these divine attributes, but we actually have to activate them. Talk more about the journey towards God. We'll see that the journey towards God means our both focus on God and ourselves. Now this is a prayer that Baha'is have 3 prayers that they can say one of them each day. They can choose which one. And this is the short obligatory prayer. And it says, "I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. I testify at this moment to my powerlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy wealth. There is none other God but thee, to help in peril, the self-subsisting." So we have been created to know God, to draw closer to God. And we do this through worshiping God and serving God. And this is actually how we activate and develop these divine attributes within us. So in this sense, the spiritual path can be seen as a journey towards God, the higher power. Now, in some other religions, they may not call it God. They might have a different term, but to me, it's essentially the same thing. God is just a word, call this unknowable essence and source of all being. Now, from the other perspective, spiritual path is a journey within. And Baha'u'llah says, "O my servants, could ye apprehend what wonders of my munificence and bounty I have willed to entrust your souls? You would of a truth rid yourselves of attachment to all created things, and would gain a true knowledge of your own selves, knowledge which is the same as the comprehension of mine own being. You would find yourselves independent of all else but me, and would perceive with your inner and outer eye, and as manifest as the revelation of my effulgent name, the seas of my loving kindness and bounty moving within you." So to me, this is a very powerful quotation, which suggests that not only are God's attributes mirrored within us, but we actually can come to know God from within. And to me, this is very much connected with the fact that we're all individual beings. And in the Baha'i writings, it says that we all have a soul, and each soul is individual. So when we approach God and get closer to God, our soul is not merged and absorbed into God's soul. And when we sort of feel a sense of union with other people, we don't lose our soul. We still are individual souls. But we can harmonize our souls with others and with God, and we can encounter God within, because all of these attributes are there. Now, the thing is that in order to develop these attributes within, we need to have our eyes opened, our perception opened. Now, we can't do that alone. We can't, if we don't have the help of the manifestation, we don't have the perceptive tools to be able to perceive all of these divine attributes within ourselves. So it's actually through, the way I understand it is through the teachings of the manifestation and the guidance and knowledge of the manifestation that actually opens our inner eyes and makes it able for us to actually know ourselves. And then once we do that, we're able more and more to experience God within. So then that sort of suggests that the spiritual path is a journey within and without. Without is in the old English sense of outside. We're in one perspective, we're drawing closer to God, which other from ourselves. But in another sense, we're going further within, and those two cannot be separated from each other. And then also another sense, within and without, is developing our spiritual qualities within through interacting with the world. And the more we interact with the world, the more we develop those qualities. And the more we develop those qualities, the better our interaction in the world is. So they continually reinforce each other. So that in that sense, Baha'is don't withdraw to, a cave or a hermitage or a monastery to live permanently. Of course, we need regular time of solitude to read the writings, to pray and meditate, but then we need to take that sense of spirituality out into the world. And I think for me, the importance of that is, if someone were to go and, spend all of their time in prayer and meditation, they may attain a sense of bliss and peace. But, if someone were to, go and visit them in their secluded cave and accidentally step on their toe, this person might react with anger because they've never had to encounter someone invading their space. So it's through participating in the affairs of the world that our virtues are both developed and tested, I think, which is an important part of the spiritual path. Yes, knowing ourselves and transcending ourselves is part of this journey. Now, as I've said, I've just mentioned that it's important that we develop these qualities within. And there are countless virtues, as we call them, all part of the spiritual path, but I'll just talk about 4 of them today. No doubt, one of the most important would have to be love, one of the core values and qualities in all religions and spiritualities. God created us out of love. And we also need to approach him with love. And this is how we actually draw closer to him. Serious thing. So as Baha'u'llah says, O son of being, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. Know this, O servant. This means to me that in order to receive God's love, we need to love him. But this is not a conditional thing. It's not saying, if you love me, I will love you. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that well, to me, it means that God always loves us. God's love is pouring down on us continually. But in order to receive that love, we have to love God. It's almost like a spiritual law. It's just like, if the sun is shining on you, but you're turning away from the sun, you're not going to receive the rays of the sun. You just have to turn towards the sun. So this, to me, is depicting that sense in which we need to turn towards God with love. And we do this, through prayer, but also through service. So service, if done in a spirit of servitude, is an act of worship. Now, another thing about this love and loving God and loving other people is that it should be pure. And this points to another mysterious thing that we know. I mean, in the Baha'i writings, it says that if we love God, if we lead a spiritual life, we will be blessed in this world and the next with countless blessings. But this is actually not the highest motivation to do those things. That the highest motivation is to do them with pure love, for the love of God, for the love of other people, without, expecting things back. Now, if you will, there's kind of a flip side to love. The Baha'i Faith, like other faiths, in particular Buddhism, has an emphasis on detachment from the world. So that detachment in this sense means that we live in the world, but we do not cling to it. We don't cling to it. We don't find our salvation in the things around us. We can enjoy the things in the world as long as they don't stand between us and God. So Baha'u'llah says of detachment, it behooveth him who is a wayfarer in the path of God and a wanderer in his way to detach himself from all who are in the heavens and on the earth. He must renounce all save God, that perchance the portals of mercy may be unlocked before his face, and the breezes of providence may waft over him. So this detachment also brings us closer to God. And why I was calling it the flip side of love is, to me, detachment in the Baha'i spiritual path is not achieved purely by focusing on detaching from things. So, but instead, it's achieved through focusing on attaching to God. So if we're attached to something, it's like we're grasping it. And it can be hard to if you're just focusing on detaching it, it can be hard to let it go. But instead, if you're focusing on holding on to something else, something higher, something more valuable, so you might have a pebble in your hand, and then someone offers you a diamond, you don't really have to focus too much on letting go of the pebble. You don't have to will that too hard. You just have to grab onto the diamond. And essentially, that's what Baha'u'llah continually tells us in his writings, is that you are blessed with all of these gems of inestimable value. I always have trouble with that word. And so if we're truly wise, we will grab onto them. And when we grab onto them, I think it's rather more effortless that we're able to let go of the other things. Okay, so another important virtue is determination. In the Baha'i writings, we are told that we all have free will. And because we have free will, we are responsible for ourselves. And Abdu'l-Baha says of this, God himself does not compel the soul to become spiritual. The exercise of the free human will is necessary. Highlights another one of the mysterious dimensions of the spiritual path, is that even though God is the all-powerful, all-loving creator, he has given us free will. And sometimes we turn around and say, why is this COVID crisis happening? Why can't God just fix everything? Things like that. And there are tests that will teach us lessons, and we do have free will to navigate ourselves through life and learn these lessons. So on the spiritual path, we really have to have this deep determination. And actually, going back to talking about a monastic life, I think this is something to learn from those people who have devoted themselves to a monastic life, is that they've made this clear decision to devote themselves to a spiritual path. And this is confirmed by, where they go to live in a certain place. They may even dress in certain clothes that make it clear to themselves that this is the life I'm devoted to. Now, Baha'is don't walk the spiritual path in that way, but to me, they need to have that same sense of determination, that each day they wake up, their home, their house is the monastery. The world is where they practice their spirituality, and they have to bring that determination day to day, which is not easy, because anyone doing a difficult task can feel overwhelmed by it. But if we realize that whatever's most important is worth our effort, then we are more able to continue that challenge. But along with determination, the other side of that is faith. We can't just rely on our own individual wills. We need the humility to know that we can't do it alone. We can't fight the spiritual battle alone. We need God's assistance. Determination and effort are a requirement to, put the key in the door, but or they take us to the door, but then God is the one who opens the door. And in order for that door to be open, we need faith. Baha'u'llah says that seeker must at all times put his trust in God. And Abdu'l-Baha, his son, says, the human spirit, unless assisted by the spirit of faith, does not become acquainted with the divine secrets and the heaven realities. It is like a mirror which, although clear, polished and brilliant, is still in need of light. Until a ray of the sun reflects upon it, it cannot discover the heavenly secrets. So ultimately, our destiny is in God's hands, and our spiritual progression is in his hands, but we need faith and determination. So really, that's my short summary of the spiritual path from a Baha'i perspective. That obviously there's many ways to conceive of that path. There's other qualities that someone might focus on. Just from my perspective, those are some of the core features, I guess.
Thank you, Peter, so much. I was thinking about so many things as you were presenting, and different aspects. One of the things that struck me as I was reading the Baha'i writings and thinking about God is, God is used in so many different ways in our society, and used in so many, the terminology means so much, and there's passages where this idea of finding God within you, that seems to be the most prominent aspect, that really our most intimate understanding of God is that degree to which God is reflected within our own selves, right? And one of the, just in the second passage, one of the qualities that I think I had a little trouble thinking about as a Baha'i when I started to read these passages was detachment, right? And how to come to terms with this idea of detachment and what that means. And as I've gone through life and experienced life, as you were saying, I think I've gotten a better sense of it because I see a lot of attachment, right? And you see people who are, whether it be forms of addiction or forms of attachment that people have really put their energy and emotion into commitment to one thing, whether it be some part of their ego or something else. And you really start to see how this quality of detachment is so important. So it was, but it's I think a learned thing, this idea of detachment. We have to kind of experience things to recognize and where we get into trouble with it.
Yeah, I guess if we're the more we focus on, if we're brought up with that or we're used to the concept of detachment, then it would be easier to develop that attribute. Yeah.
The other thing I love that you said was this idea of love. And I think one of the things that really helped me along my spiritual path was, as I read the writings, I just fell in love with them. You become attached to them, I suppose. You're just in love. It's really that same sort of love that we feel for everything else, except it's transcendent. It's really indescribable in many ways. Baha'u'llah just praises throughout his writings the love of God. And I think that's kind of the spiritual, that's the energy for that spiritual elevator that helps us get detached. So, we just don't love these other things people get attached to because we have something else that something more transcendent that we're so much more attached to and we find so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I think sometimes it comes to mind for me the analogy with food, like some aspects of life are like junk food, and we just are drawn to them and we want to eat more and more of it, even though we know that it's detrimental to our physical health.
Yeah.
And we keep wanting to eat a healthier diet. So we say, okay, I'll have a salad or whatever, and the salad just doesn't feel as much, doesn't satisfy our taste buds. We don't feel full. But
right.
if we would continue, okay, not just eating salad, but foods, I think we would develop a higher taste.
Yeah.
And become more sensitive to that type of diet. And then we would actually not want to eat the junk food. That's just an analogy. And I think it's even more exaggerated in reality with the spiritual life and the material world, where the spiritual life is just far more superior to the material world. But our spiritual taste buds are just so used to this material food that we're eating. And it's through increasing our spiritual perception that we're able to sense, well, what is this deeper spiritual life there?
Yeah.
I want more of that,
Yeah. One of the things that I often thought is there's nothing special about me in relationship to these things. I think that anybody, if they were to experience these feelings, experience these beautiful ideas and everything, that they would be as attracted as me and probably more so. It's just, as you said, it's just a matter of exposure and getting used to eating that food, if you will. Well, yeah, please. I want to open up to others.
Thank you, Peter. That was really helpful to process. I'm going back to when you spoke of the love of God, and God is unknowable, and but He sends us messengers, manifestations, so we come to know more about God through the messages of these manifestations. So I'm trying to process, thinking about what is the love of God when we can't understand this unknowable essence. Is it loving? So we have these kind of gems within us we have to bring out. So if we're showing love and detachment, this is a way of showing our love for God, serving others, but and loving the manifestation and His message. I guess I'm just kind of coming to think through, because it's a phrase we've all heard, love for God, but thinking it through, how do you understand that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a big question because yeah, I mean, we can love God, like we can pray. Obviously, we can close our eyes and pray to God. So that's the simple way that we can think of it. But then we can also love God, yeah, through serving other people. So we could, and I think in the writings it says that we should see everyone, love everyone, because God loves them, and so and that makes us overlook their faults, and because we all have faults. I think, but then also, so we should love other people. And lately, in the last year or so, I've been questioning a lot the notion of loving ourselves. And to me, I think it's implied in the fact that God loves everyone, therefore we should love all people. We are a person, we are each a person, therefore we should love ourselves. So that's another aspect of loving God. If we love God, we will love ourselves because God loves us. But then another dimension to it is that we can't just focus on ourselves, because then we're cutting ourselves off from the love that God is shedding on everyone. So I think to really love God is to serve others, but in serving others, we obviously we still have to think about our own physical health and mental well-being and things like that as well.
Thank you. Oh, Meg Bolton, let me unmute you, Meg. 1 second there.
When I think of loving God, I have a paralyzed vocal cord, excuse me, so I'm sounding like Margaret Thatcher or something. But I, as a child, I was very much drawn to God. I got very happy when my mother would kneel next to me and we'd say prayers at night. And I didn't really quite understand what was going on. I just knew that I looked forward to that time. And later, through things that happened in my life, I found myself drawn like little iron filings to a magnet. So it wasn't so much that I actively loved God, but I somehow was drawn to Him, and I wanted to go that way because there was such happiness there. So it was more of a almost instinctual feeling that I had. And I can imagine that yes, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble expressing this.
It's
To
beautiful, Meg, so please continue.
oh, well, thank you. It's just it's sort of an intuitive seeking and an active seeking, and I can't say I was on the regular path the whole time, because in high school and early days of college, I decided I was an atheist. That was very lonely. But after a while, I found the Baha'i Faith, and I just said, oh, this, I'm drawn to it again. It was almost like going home again, and to just, okay, look at the writings as these ladders of development, and all these extra goodies and wonderful bounties that I could just keep following and following. And I think that's my way of saying I love God, just that I want to be with him or it or her. It's like a baby and the mother, the baby turns to the mother and is nourished. It's just what the baby does. And in us going, responding to God's love. God loves us, and then this great wave comes back, and we can feel that love of God too. Then what a ride. It's very wonderful. And I guess what I'm saying to Charlotte Williams is, don't worry about how you express your love of God. It's just that you want to, I guess. That's all.
I think that's nice. And such a good point that you made.
Pardon?
I thought that was a very beautiful way
Oh,
that you
thank you.
did that. And
Thank
it's so important, yeah.
Oh, good.
I agree wholeheartedly, Meg. Thank you so much. It really, there's something primal about the experience that is really indescribable. And I think that, the truth of all of the things that Peter was outlining in terms of the nature of the messengers of God, for instance, and the unknowability of God, I think is in some way matched by a lot of our experience, right? We all have this native love for God, of these attributes that are expressed in us, or something, as you said, as you expressed, it's very primal, but the religions, the revelations of God are sort of able to attract us to those things, like the filings going to the magnet, and it helps us remember these feelings that we have on a very fundamental level, and experience them consciously, and religion is one of the things I'm acutely aware of, is the nature of religious language, because I think to some people it sounds like you're talking like a bunch of nobody has any, unless you have the experience to match it, people don't know what you're talking about. And it sounds like you use these words, bounties and blessings and all of these things, and people can't connect with that at all. But when you experience it, those words flow out of your mouth all the time as you're trying to express what you're feeling. And you said that so beautifully. I'm so glad you said that, Meg. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, thank you.
First, I just wanted to mention to Meg that I think from childhood, you had the wonderful gift of purity, and that stayed with you. And that's why you acted like the iron filings to the magnet, because God is the magnet. And I think children are more pure because they haven't spent that much time in the environment to get tainted by what surrounds us.
So I unmuted you. If you can, okay,
Yep,
there you go.
yep. Yeah, I'm going to say now what I was thinking of saying before. A couple of years ago, I took a Wilmette course on the covenants, plural, of the Baha'i Faith. And we started with the primordial covenant, which I had never heard of before. Anyway, I forget, right, it's in my prayer book, but I don't, in the prayer book's over there. There's a surah, a couple of surahs in a couple of verses, I think it's in the 7th surah, where we have the Quran.
Yeah.
We have the God calls to him, and I picture like all these things happening on an asteroid or something like that. Yeah, we can't. We have to visualize something. So, but God calls to him all the progeny, and that word's in Arabic, but the word is variously translated as progeny or seeds of Adam. And so this is the post-lapsarian of Adam after the fall, after the expulsion from Eden. God calls together, and he all the seeds, the progeny of Adam, and says to them all, am I not your Lord? And everybody says, yay. And then the next verse, or verse 2 or 3 below that, goes on to say, God's kind of doing an aside to the audience. Yeah, we know you say that now, but give you a couple of tests. And so we're going to have to send you guidance throughout and you will have tests and all that. Anyway, am I not your Lord? I'm so one of the things that Baha'is are asked to do is say Allah Akbar, which is God is most glorious 95 times each day. And a lot of people do it on beads. I do it on beads because it's just easier for me. And I visually I'm answering. It's a yay. It's a yay. It's a yay. But the other thing that's interesting is that throughout the books of the books of Moses, and also in the gospel, we have God's always summoning the prophets, summoning the whichever it happens to be, and the response is always, here am I, here am I, here am I. And in one of our Baha'i prayers, it's a prayer for healing, and it's rather lengthy. And at the end, towards the end, there's a large paragraph, and kind of in the middle of that, it almost, and I don't have it memorized, but there is a sentence in there where God answers. The way I understand it is that God answers for the seeds, for the progeny. Here am I. Yeah, here am I. Here am I. And so I think that we're constantly throughout our lives, like all the time, we're being called. It's in here. We're hearing it. It's here. Am I not your Lord? Am I not your Lord? Am I not your Lord? We're being called to obedience. And somehow or other that fit into where we were 20 minutes ago. I'd be hard pressed to remember where. But I just think it's that yearning, that it's the metal filings, Meg. Am I not your Lord? It's just we're always being called.
That's beautiful, Betsy. There's a passage in the writings of the Bab. He says that with every revelation of God comes, it's the same question goes out to all humanity: am I not your Lord? And whether or not and then based on the purity of our hearts, we respond, to that. But to get back to what Peter was talking about, being attached, if we're distracted, right? And a lot of the terminology that's used in religion is that you're heedless, right? Which is a form of distraction. It's a form of not being aware. It's about awareness, right? There's a lovely passage in the writings of the Bab where he describes that we are like fish in water. And see if I can frame this right. He says, you are like fish in water, asking yourselves, what is it upon which you depend? Oblivious that the thing that sustains your life surrounds you. And that's always a beautiful idea as well.
I'd love to find that passage.
That passage, yeah. I'm gonna see if I can get. I'll see if I can get it. I may be conflating a couple different passages together in my interpretation of it, but yeah, I was always struck by that analogy. Baha'u'llah uses it again in one of his tablets as well. I saw that. Well, listen, thank you all so much. If there's more discussion, we can certainly stay around. I think Peter may have to go to work.
Yeah, I gotta have lunch and then teach classes online. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Peter, thank you so much for coming and giving the presentation and sharing with us your beautiful thoughts. And it was really absolutely terrific.
That's my pleasure. I feel a bit, feel like I talk too much. I feel being just part of the discussion, but it was fun anyway. It was actually good for me to actually just prepare the presentation, because it just reminds me of everything that, like I said, we forget, or we just don't remember as clearly or deeply as we should, you know.
I agree. It's all about spiritual conversation and just sharing these things together across, what is it, 11 time zones? Something, yeah. So thank you so much. I want to highlight a couple things for you all. Please share them around. Sifter of Dust does something called the 19-day challenge. Charlotte and I designed this years ago, and we send out morning and evening a passage from the scriptures. We find music to go with it. And we really framed it as a way that you can share with your friends who are not Baha'is to join you in your 19-day fast, in a sense. They don't have to fast, but they can just follow along with the passages. It appears on our blog, which is on the website. It's called Latest Posts. You can follow it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. And we put up a post morning and evening. For you, Peter, that's going to be, I don't know, it's not going to be quite the same timing, but you can share it nevertheless. And please do. They're not, it's specifically not, we use the Baha'i writings quite a bit, of course, but it's really framed for people who are learning about the faith. So, and what we'll do next week and the week after during the fast is at Thursday nights in this time slot. What we'll do is we'll just take some of these quotes that we posted during the week, and we'll talk about them together. So if you've been following along and there was a quote that struck you and you want to have something to say about it, this will be the opportunity on Thursday nights. We'll just get together and talk about the quotes we posted the week before. So we're going to do that through the fast. So if you're it's not just for people who aren't Baha'is. This whole thing is for everyone. So, but invite your friends and please invite them to join us. So, thank you so much, everyone.